My name is Jessica, and what I am about to share with you is not a story I ever thought I would tell. It is a sacred and terrifying truth that was entrusted to me. I feel compelled to share it because what I experienced didn't just change my life. It shattered my entire understanding of reality and rebuilt it on a foundation of profound, unshakable truth. I crossed over to the other side, and what I saw there was something I never expected. I met Jesus, and he showed me a profound revelation about Black people that completely shocked me. It was not just a vision, it was the unveiling of a spiritual reality that has reshaped my understanding of history, spirituality, and the world we live in. I am still trying to process all of it, but I know one thing with absolute certainty: this story needs to be told. It was an ordinary Tuesday, at least that's what I thought. My life had become a predictable rhythm of work, stress, and exhaustion. I was a 38-year-old architect, successful by most standards, but I was deeply tired. Not just tired from work, but a soul-deep weariness. My mother was in the late stages of a debilitating illness, and I was her primary caregiver. The weight of her suffering, combined with the pressures of my career, had left me feeling hollowed out. My faith was a routine, a Sunday morning habit I performed without any real connection. I believed in God, but he felt distant, a silent observer to my struggles. On that particular morning, nothing seemed out of place. I had woken up before dawn, gone through my usual workout, and was at my firm early, trying to get ahead on a major project. But something was different, a strange heaviness in the air, a feeling of anticipation I couldn't explain. I had no idea that in just a few hours, my entire life would take a turn I could never have imagined. I was in a late morning design meeting, presenting blueprints to a client. The air in the conference room felt thick, almost suffocating. Then, out of nowhere, a sharp, blinding pain exploded behind my eyes. It was like a lightning strike inside my skull, intense, electric, and utterly terrifying. I tried to speak, to say something was wrong, but my vocal cords wouldn't respond. My vision blurred, and suddenly everything around me seemed to warp and slow down. The faces of my colleagues, the charts on the wall, it was like the world had gone into slow motion, the sound becoming a distorted, deep hum. I don't remember the exact moment I collapsed, but I do remember the feeling of falling and the sharp impact of my head against the floor. The next thing I knew, I was on the ground, staring up at the acoustic tiles of the ceiling. I could hear voices, muffled and panicked as if coming from underwater, someone shouting my name, someone else calling 911. As I lay there, something strange happened. The excruciating pain in my head began to fade, replaced by an overwhelming sense of calm, a peace that was utterly alien to my stressed-out life. It was as if all the worries, my mother's health, the deadlines, the financial pressures, simply dissolved into meaninglessness. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't even sure if I was alive. That's when I realized, with a serene certainty, that I was dying. One moment I was on the floor feeling my body grow cold, and the next I was floating above it. It was the most bizarre and yet natural sensation. I could see everything with a 360-degree clarity. The paramedics rushing into the conference room, my coworker, his face pale with shock, frantically performing CPR on my still form. I saw my own body, lifeless on the ground, a stranger in a business suit. But I didn't feel any attachment to it, no grief or panic. There was only an odd sense of detachment, as if I were watching a well-acted scene in a movie. I tried to speak, to comfort my terrified colleagues, but no sound came out. I was weightless, a point of pure consciousness, drifting further and further away from the chaos below. Then I felt a pull. It was not a physical force, but a spiritual one, a gentle but insistent tug on the very core of my being, guiding me upward. I had no control over it, but I had no desire to resist either. I felt peaceful, more peaceful than I had ever felt in my entire life on Earth. A light appeared in the distance, a tiny speck at first that grew exponentially into a brilliant, beautiful star. It wasn't the harsh light of the sun, but a warm and inviting glow, a light that felt like love itself calling me home. The further I went, the more the world I had known faded away, its sounds and concerns becoming distant echoes. All that was left was the light and a sense of overwhelming love that wrapped around me like a divine blanket. Then, just as I was about to be fully consumed by the light, I heard a voice. It wasn't loud, but it was the most powerful sound I had ever heard, resonating deep within my soul. "It is not your time yet." The voice was both familiar and ancient. In that instant, everything around me shifted, and I found myself standing in a place I couldn't describe. It was a beautiful, ethereal waiting area between two worlds, and that's when I saw him. The moment I stepped fully into this new reality, my surroundings solidified. I was in a place that felt both timeless and new. Before me, a tunnel stretched far into the distance, but it was made not of any physical material, but of pure, living, glowing light. It pulsed with a gentle rhythm, as if it were breathing. On either side, countless figures of souls stood watching me, their forms shimmering like heat waves on a summer road. I couldn't see their faces clearly, but I knew they were people who had crossed over before me. They weren't speaking with voices, but I could hear their thoughts, a chorus of welcome and comfort washing over me, letting me know I was safe and that this was a sacred passage. I continued forward, drawn deeper into the tunnel. With every step, I felt lighter, as if the very molecules of my earthly burdens, grief, stress, insecurity, were dissolving away. Then, at the very end of the tunnel, I saw him. He radiated a light that was the source of all the light in this place. His presence was an overwhelming symphony of perfect love, absolute peace, and unimaginable power, all held in a gentle, welcoming form. I knew, with a certainty that transcended all logic, that I was standing before Jesus Christ. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, I could only feel. He looked at me, and in that single, silent gaze, I saw my entire life flash before me. Every moment, every decision, every secret thought, every mistake, every act of kindness. It was all there, laid bare before him. But there was no judgment in his eyes, only a perfect, heartbreakingly beautiful understanding. Then he spoke, and his voice was both the rumble of a distant galaxy and the intimate whisper of a loving father. "You are not here by accident, Jessica." Before I could form a response, he raised his hand and everything changed. The tunnel vanished. I was somewhere else, a place outside of time and space, a classroom of the soul where divine truths were revealed. And that's when he showed me the truth about Black people, a truth that would shatter my worldview and change the course of my life forever. I stood there frozen in awe as Jesus extended his hand toward me. Without a word, the space around us transformed. Before me, images began to form, not on a screen, but as living, breathing realities made of pure energy. The first thing I saw was the continent of Africa, but in Africa I had never seen in history books. It was vast, beautiful, and glowing with a deep, intrinsic golden light. I saw universities of spiritual learning under the stars, libraries of ancient wisdom. I saw kings and queens who consulted with God before they ruled, their reigns marked by justice and peace. I saw a people full of profound wisdom, unshakable resilience, and a powerful, innate spiritual connection to the Creator. They were not broken, they were not weak, they were not primitive. They were chosen. Jesus spoke, his voice resonating with the truth of ages. The world has lied about them, and to them, he said, they are not what they have been made to believe. They were given gifts of the Spirit, direct access to divine power, and a deep knowledge of my ways that many have tried to erase from history. The vision shifted, and my heart broke. I saw the horror of chains, of the Middle Passage, of people being stolen from their homeland. I saw immense suffering, physical pain, and generations being systematically told they were less than what they were, their divine identity buried under layers of lies. And then I saw something even more shocking. I saw the spiritual forces working behind the scenes, demonic entities, spirits of greed, pride, and racism, intentionally orchestrating this oppression. Jesus turned to me, his eyes blazing with a holy fire. The oppression was never just physical, Jessica. It was always, at its root, spiritual. The enemy orchestrated this great evil because if these people knew who they truly were, if they walked in the fullness of their spiritual authority, the world as you know it would change overnight. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't just history. This was an active spiritual war that had been raging for centuries. The deception ran so deep, it had become the foundation of the modern world, and most people had no idea. But then the vision changed again. I saw modern times. I saw people waking up, a spiritual stirring in their souls. I saw them beginning to question the lies, to research their history, to feel the pull of an identity that had been stolen. The same people who had been told they were nothing were starting to remember who they truly were. A smile of profound love spread across Jesus' face. The time of revelation has begun. They will rise again. Not with weapons of the flesh, but with the spiritual power that is their birthright. The visions didn't stop. Jesus pulled me deeper into this divine revelation. I saw time long before the great tragedies, before colonization, before the very idea of racial hierarchy. I saw a world where Black people held spiritual knowledge that was powerful beyond words. They understood the connection between heaven and earth, between the spirit and the physical world, in a way that had been lost. I saw prophets, leaders, and warriors, men and women who had direct, intimate communication with God. They didn't need intermediaries. They could hear the voice of heaven for themselves. This is why they were targeted, Jesus said, his expression filled with both sorrow for what was lost and love for his people. Because those who seek to rule the world in darkness always fear those who carry the pure light of divine wisdom. The enemy's plan was to strip away their culture, their faith, their very identity. It wasn't just about control, it was about severing their connection to me, to the truth. But as I watched, I saw something incredible. Even through the unimaginable oppression, through generations of being told they were nothing, their spirit was never completely broken. Their inner power never truly left them. They carry something that cannot be destroyed, Jesus continued. It is a seed of divine remembrance, and that is why they must remember now. At that moment, I understood this wasn't about hate or division. It was about restoration and justice. The world had been built on a foundation of lies, but the truth was rising. The vision changed a final time. I saw a great awakening sweeping across the globe. People of all nations were involved, but at the forefront, leading the charge, were Black people, standing up and realizing who they were in God's eyes. I saw them breaking free from the mental chains of inferiority, reclaiming their spiritual power, their authority, their gifts of prophecy and healing that had lain dormant for centuries. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. The world had tried to erase them, but they were stepping into the fullness of their truth. And as they did, something miraculous happened. The spiritual atmosphere of the entire world began to shift. Jesus turned to me once more. The prophecy is unfolding, he said. Those who were last shall be first. They will lead the world into a new era of spiritual awakening. Is this why you're showing me this? I thought, my soul trembling with the weight of it all. Am I supposed to share this message? Yes, Jesus answered, reading my thoughts. You must tell them. The world is changing, and they need to know the truth. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed by what I had just witnessed. It wasn't about one group being superior. It was about restoring a divine balance, about unveiling a sacred truth that had been violently hidden for centuries. Suddenly, everything around me started to fade. The light, the visions, even the tangible presence of Jesus himself. I felt myself being pulled backward, as if an invisible force was dragging me away from heaven. No, I cried out, I don't want to go back. Jesus smiled, but his eyes held a serious command. You must, he said, the world needs you to speak. Before I could protest, I felt a violent jolt, like being hit with a defibrillator made of pure electricity. I gasped for air, my eyes flew open, I was back. The chaotic beeping of hospital machines surrounded me. Nurses and doctors rushed to my side. I could feel my heart pounding, my lungs struggling to take in air. I was alive, but I was not the same person who had left. I had spoken to Jesus, I had seen the truth. And I knew my life would never be the same. When I woke up in the hospital, everything felt different. The air felt heavier, the lights too bright, the voices around me too loud. I was alive, but I didn't feel like the same person who had died that day. My family was there, crying, holding my hands, thanking God that I had survived. But I couldn't focus on any of it. My mind was still in that other place, still replaying everything I had been shown. I had spoken to Jesus. I had been shown a world-altering truth. And now I was back in a world that didn't know. For days, I barely spoke. I could see the worry in my family's eyes, the way they whispered when they thought I wasn't listening. They thought I was in shock, that I was traumatized from the accident. And maybe I was, but not for the reason they thought. I was struggling with something much bigger than myself. How could I tell people what I had seen? Who would possibly believe me? I tried to push it away, to convince myself that it had just been a dream, a complex hallucination brought on by my near-death experience. But I knew better. It wasn't a dream. It was more real than the bed I was lying in. And the longer I stayed silent, the heavier the truth became. The weight of what I knew pressed down on me like a physical force I couldn't escape. One night, unable to sleep, I found myself staring out the hospital window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. And that's when I heard the voice again, soft but undeniable deep in my spirit. Speak. I turned sharply, but no one was there. Yet I knew what it meant. I couldn't keep this to myself. I had to tell people. The first time I tried to talk about my experience, I was met with a wall of well-meaning skepticism. I had gathered my closest friends and family, my heart pounding, determined to share what Jesus had shown me about Black people and their hidden spiritual power. But the moment I started speaking, I could see the doubt clouding their eyes. "You were in a serious accident, Jessica," my sister said gently, her voice full of pity. "Your brain was deprived of oxygen. Maybe your mind was just processing things." "No," I interrupted, my voice shaking with conviction. "It wasn't a dream. It wasn't my imagination. It was real." I went on, telling them everything: the tunnel, meeting Jesus, the revelation about Black people and their divine connection. I spoke with a passion I didn't know I possessed, hoping that something in my words would reach them. But when I finished, there was only a painful silence. Then my best friend cleared her throat and gave me a forced, fragile smile. "Well, that's an interesting theory," she said hesitantly. "I mean, maybe it's symbolic, you know. Maybe your mind was just processing all the social justice issues happening in the world." My heart sank. They didn't believe me. Not really. I tried again with others, church members, acquaintances, even strangers online. Time and time again, I was met with the same reactions. Some dismissed it as a hallucination. Others told me to keep it to myself, that it was too divisive. Some even got angry, accusing me of trying to push a radical agenda. It was frustrating and deeply painful. I had been given this message for a reason, yet no one wanted to hear it. Then one night, as I sat alone, crying, questioning whether I should just stop trying, I heard the voice again: "Keep speaking." And I knew I couldn't give up. The more I spoke, the more the resistance intensified. It wasn't just skepticism anymore. Things started happening that I couldn't explain. My phone would randomly shut off when I was writing about my experience. Videos I recorded about my NDE would mysteriously get deleted from my hard drive. Strange calls from unknown numbers began flooding my phone, with only heavy breathing on the other end. At first, I brushed it off as paranoia, but then one night, something happened that I couldn't ignore. I had just finished recording a powerful message about my experience, talking about how Black people had been spiritually oppressed for centuries. I was about to upload it when my computer screen flickered violently and the entire video file vanished, just like that. I tried every recovery software I knew, but it was gone. Not in the recycle bin, not saved anywhere, just completely erased. A deep chill ran down my spine. I looked around my quiet apartment, suddenly feeling like I wasn't alone. That's when I saw it. A shadow darker than the surrounding darkness, moving across my living room wall. I gasped, spinning around, but there was nothing there. "Keep speaking," the voice whispered again, but this time it felt closer, almost urgent. I knew then that I was facing something bigger than I had realized. This wasn't just about me sharing a story, this was a spiritual battle. And whatever forces had been trying to keep this truth hidden for centuries, they were not happy. I had a choice to make. I could stop. I could let the doubt, the fear, and the intense resistance silence me. I could pretend this never happened, go back to my normal life, and never speak of it again. Or I could fight. I could keep sharing the message, no matter the cost, no matter who doubted me, no matter what tried to stop me. I thought back to that moment with Jesus, to the way he had looked at me when he told me the truth. He had chosen me to see this for a reason, and if I turned away now, I would be turning away from him. So I made my decision. One night, as I was deep in prayer, seeking guidance and strength, it happened again. I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't fully awake either. It was as if my spirit had been pulled into another realm, a place where time didn't exist. And in this place, I was shown the future. I saw a great awakening, but I also saw a great war. Not a war between nations with bombs and bullets, but a global spiritual war. The forces that had enslaved minds and spirits for centuries weren't going to give up their power easily. Their weapons were lies, deception, media manipulation, and control. I saw people everywhere waking up to their true power, stepping into their divine identity, and breaking free from generations of manipulation. I saw Black people, once broken and silenced, rising with a spiritual authority that shook the very foundations of the earth. They were reclaiming their knowledge, their spiritual gifts, their direct connection to God. But I also saw the enemy striking back with ferocious intensity. I saw media, governments, and even some corrupted religious leaders doing everything in their power to keep the truth from spreading. They would create distractions, stir up division, and use fear to keep people in spiritual chains. Then I saw something that made my heart stop. A wave of chaos and destruction, unlike anything the world had ever seen. I saw familiar coastlines swallowed by the sea, fires raging across continents, and earthquakes in places that had never experienced them before. I saw cities falling, people running in terror, the world crying out for help. I turned to Jesus, who was standing beside me in the vision, and asked, "Why is this happening?" He looked at me, his face filled with both sorrow and divine strength. The world must be shaken so that what cannot be shaken may remain. It must be restored to its true foundation. Then he showed me something else. After the chaos, after the suffering, after the destruction, a new world began to emerge. A world where people were no longer enslaved by lies, a world where the truth about who they were could no longer be hidden. The final battle has begun, Jesus said, but victory belongs to those who walk in truth. Just like that, I was back in my room, gasping for air, my body trembling and my heart racing. I had seen what was coming, and now I had no choice but to prepare and to warn others. The weight of what I had seen was too much to ignore. The world was heading toward a spiritual war, and most people had no idea. They were still caught up in distractions, arguing about politics, chasing money, living in fear, while the real battle was happening in the unseen realm. I started speaking louder, more urgently. I told people what I had seen, what Jesus had shown me. Some listened, many didn't. I realized something heartbreaking: some people don't want to wake up. They are too comfortable in the lies, too afraid of what the truth will cost them. But whether they believe it or not, the time is coming. The awakening is happening, and every person will have to make a choice. Will you fight for the truth, or will you remain in the dark? I don't know why Jesus chose me, a simple architect, to deliver this message, but I know I can't stop now. The forces trying to silence me are growing stronger, but so is my faith. If you're hearing this, know that this isn't a coincidence. You were meant to hear this, you were meant to wake up. And now the choice is in your hands. This isn't just my story, this is your story too. The truth is coming to the surface, whether the world is ready or not. The spiritual battle is already happening, and you have a role to play. Maybe you've felt it, the feeling that something in the world is deeply wrong, that you were made for something more. That's because you are a part of this awakening. But awakening isn't easy. It requires courage, it requires faith. It requires you to step out of fear and into your divine power. The time is now, choose wisely.